Ground rules. This is a joint discussion between council and the planning commission. Comments from the public and staff will be entertained at the end of the meeting. And we may request specific information from members of the staff from time to time. But other than that, the discussion will be limited to the council and planning commission members. So, any questions on the ground rules? All right, I want to thank everybody for coming today. I know this is not easy, and I appreciate the staff's help in trying to get 10 people together at one time with varying agendas and needs. One thing we could do, if everybody would take their cell phones and put them on silent, and minimizing the interruptions. So with that, everybody's got the agenda we've published. So let's jump into the first item. What are the various roles, responsibilities, and expectations for council, planning commission, and staff? So first of all, I throw this out to the council. What do you believe the role of the planning commission should be?
Well, my understanding is that you have review and check box. My understanding.
What are the various roles, responsibilities, and expectations for council?
Personally, I think the planning commission has a responsibility to the council, because council has the final decision, to give us as much input as you give to your meeting. In other words, in the past, the planning commission has recommended this. That's because your vote did so. But I know, because I come and I watch, that there has been some incidences where you said yes because you're legally required to, but if you have responsibility. So I think the responsibility of the planning commission to the council is to make sure that we know everything that you have concerns about, regardless of the votes. Anybody else from the council have any other?
I agree with that, and like I said, I always count on the planning and y'all. I think sometimes y'all may, I guess one of my worries is that y'all think that sometimes that we don't value y'all's decisions, and we do. I count on y'all, because sometimes y'all have more time to some of these projects, developments, and sift through some of the material and narrow it down and give us a recommendation, rather say yes vote or a yes vote, but we're concerned about this, and this. That helps me a lot in my decision making.
John, I agree. Obviously, you have a lot more on your plate than just a couple of items that come before planning in a month. We may dedicate 2 hours to something.
Yes, sir.
And it's on your agenda and you are expected to dispatch it in 10 or 15 minutes. So we can certainly put our reservations in with any approvals or disapprovals that we may do.
I see those in written minutes ahead of time. So we have anything that you have concern for as a planning commission, that we have time to analyze them ourselves some. I appreciate the fact that it comes to us with a recommendation for approval. But there again, like stated and John stated, is unless we've been at your meeting, we might not what your reservations are. Having them ahead of time gives us a little bit of time to think about them as it comes along, because the ultimate responsibility to say yay or nay will fall back with the council. I need as much information as possible. I can't try to make all of your planning commission meetings, but I can't make every one of them ahead of time.
Well, those meetings are off a couple of hours long. There's a lot of information in there, and to attend or even to watch the video takes a huge chunk out of your day.
It can go both ways. If the planning commission denies something, we would like to know what the reservations were that possibly deny this.
How soon does a project you show up at council? Planning commission. Changing that. And that was. Steve, council. If you think back in November, we were given stuff literally 8 days after a planning commission. And I remember that one particularly because I was starting to get letters from the public before I even read my packet, you know, and so we as a council decided that we were going to have, because every development seems to have some sticking points, that we will have a workshop in between first reading and planning, so that we can vet it a little more casually. First reading, we have to vote 5 minutes after we have the public hearing. And, you know, with a workshop, we don't vote because there's time to assess it. And that goes back to what you were saying about, Steve saying about getting the information. We should not be required, nor should you rely on the fact that you video. No. No. We, you know, the videos, quite frankly, aren't really done. Oftentimes you don't see the screen, you know, and I can't make every. And I'm going to see the same stuff all over again. So to sit through a 2-hour video and then I'm going to sit through it again, I don't think you should rely. I will do it. For other council members, we'll do it when we can, but it shouldn't. Our participation shouldn't be reliant on us watching your video.
We also discussed delaying, not having the vote first and second reading. There's some concern in there by delaying it that 30-day time frame. Gives a little bit, sometimes we've had, well, the one we had to have 2 workshops plus. And so to take the time to do it right, I guess, is what I'm thinking of, because sometimes there's information that is not available at the workshop. It comes out.
You quote Bo. Bo often says, that's a great saying, shouldn't be in a hurry to make a mistake. And so if we have to take extra time, then that's what this council wants to do. And that's the change. Going back to your question that we made with this.
So are you going to hold public forum before first reading or for the first and second?
Workshops, just like this today, all workshops, all public hearing. The public has the right to, at least we should give them the courtesy to make comment.
So timing wise, before first reading or before second?
Before first reading,
Before first reading.
that we will have a workshop. Now, I think
If required.
if required, I mean, I think if it's pretty easy, and we all know what's going to be easy and what's not, it's not necessary to do so. I still would prefer, even if we have a workshop, we don't have the first reading 8 days after planning commission. And that's input that we should give to staff. Yours is usually the second Wednesday of the month, is that right?
Yes.
And our council meeting is 8 days later. So I would be in favor of that. It doesn't come to council 8 days later, that it comes, because if we do want to go back and look at the video, we do want to read the minutes of your thing, we don't have to do it. Literally, if we're away that weekend or something, we don't get the packet. So that's up to us as a council to give that input to the staff if we want to do it that way. But personally, I would.
May be able to judge workshops. You, the commission, if you have people there very interested in your meeting from the public, seems the public is much more tuned to what y'all are doing now, and they're showing up at the meeting. Again, sometimes we may not have to have that hearing, but sometimes if there's a concern from a resident at that time, we should probably have that workshop and listen to them and whoever else.
Well, somehow, it seems like talking mill doesn't get wound up planning. So specifically the apartments over at Okeechee Crossing. Speak of it. But my goodness, a week later.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, I think that could be a call as far as workshop is much more council and the mayor what decide if a workshop is necessary. We all start hearing from residents about it. That may be the time to do it. We don't have a written in stone time frame.
Well, does it make sense? 8 days, you're not gonna see our minutes. And even by your first reading, you might not see our minutes. So do you get a draft copy of our minutes ahead of time, or how are you gonna get the information from the planning commission?
We typically don't get your minutes in our packet. But what we did start getting, we did start getting in our presentation a list of your objections, or your comments, rather than just getting a planning commission approves this. I forget the last one because I missed the last meeting, so it had to be the meeting before. You listed 4 things. And I made comment to staff on, and I thought this was an excellent addition. So at least we had comments you had made at your meeting that didn't necessarily support the yes decision. Yeah, you said yes because you were legally required to, but you had this. I think that was helpful for me to know that.
I'm a little confused because our last meeting was charter school. And there was quite a bit of comment from the floor. And we had reservations. But it was on your agenda that same afternoon. So where does the workshop fit into that?
That's where we want to change that. Now, we had a couple of things with when we, the council, knew what was coming up. Number one, I was gonna be away in the middle of February, and the week before Mike was in. So, the council felt it was important that I be there for the apartment. And so we gave a 30-day gap between first and second reading. That was one factor. The second factor, we as a council going back a year ago expressed to staff that we don't want 4-hour meetings, that we're fried by the end of the 4 hours. So in this case, we had 4 somewhat difficult decisions to make. The 2 apartments, the Pulte thing on Argent, and the charter school. So we purposely told staff not to put all 4 on the agenda. And that, put the 2 apartments, because they're on the first agenda of February and March. And then in the middle agenda of February, middle agenda of March, we have the other two. So it was too much for us to do in one. So both of those factors came into play. But we do not want that to happen again. First, the planning commission in the morning.
When I saw it on the agenda for the workshop, it surprised me because we had quite a few reservations. And there was no way that you folks would have known that.
I think it's a general feeling, and council, please step up if I'm saying something different. We don't want that ever. We want spacing.
Well, that's make y'all feel ineffective. Y'all having that, and then we don't have it, y'all spend all that time, and then we have a meeting that afternoon and haven't been able to, y'all's observations, objections, or whatever. I mean, I know how you felt. You had to.
I don't think that, was that the one that we never even got to?
Right.
You know?
But it was on.
You're right. And that just let us, we recognized all four of those topics were way too big to try to tackle in one meeting.
I just feel slowing things down a little bit, gives everybody a time to, their voices can be heard and to make a rational decision on some of these. If, developers and those, they want to push, they have a time frame too, but we also have to respect, the time frame that we need to make the decision. I said, I've attended your meetings and I do, 8 days later, it's like, wow. And not even having minutes. I prefer to see written minutes from your meetings before it even comes to first reading.
Well, it's whatever decisions you make, the city will live with for decades.
And that's why that's why we need the information.
I wonder if our minutes adequately indicate the kinds of issues we'd like to bring to council's attention sometime. Maybe we could create some specific communication list. Here are, we will approve with the following conditions and recommendations, but if there could even be a second list, these were areas of concern. Because I'm not sure that's always reflected even before, minutes.
Well, our next section, or we got a section in here to talk about minutes. I've heard it. So far, I think I hear is that, we have a legal requirement to review and check boxes according to the state's law. And to provide input to council. Council would like to have details of not just our outcome, but also any reservations that we may have about any given product, and that our concerns should be written and into the hands of council in time for them to review them and kind of in their own path forward. And then council is going to inject workshops before first readings, and that they don't want to see items days after we have our meeting. Meeting, we should put it, say, not one of our meetings, allow time for public to come to you and you to digest what we've done, ask questions of us if you need to.
That still doesn't give time for our minutes to get to them, because our minutes get approved a month later. Okay.
Let's deal with that item. So,
But I think whatever, the important part is to understand your objection. Because I understand that, listen, as council, we come up with situations where we're struggling, and I think that's on the agenda, with, all right, we have to approve something for for whatever legal reasons we have to approve it. Because you may not want the zoning of 44 per acre. I can't change that. But I can live with that. So I personally want to know when you object to something and why. Whether that comes through in the minutes or it's in some sort of summary in when we to us workshop or the first reading. I think, and I'll give you a case in point. Remember Gateway? Okay? Now, you all watching and everything, and I know you made a mistake, and I talked to several people. You were against that because it changed the ownership of these units. Now, personally, I didn't agree. I thought, you know, whether they live there as renters or as homeowners, still got the same people there. But I understood what you were saying. And I would have liked to discuss that more in depth on us, even though I disagree with you. And that's a good case in point. So what happens is it comes to council as a recommendation to approve. We don't really see the anxiety that you had and or the reason that you had it. I knew it because I watched it. But again, you can't rely, you shouldn't be relying on it. And I think a broader conversation of that would have been helpful. If not just for council, but for you to understand our final vote. Because you probably just thought, oh, I don't care what we have to say about that. And we just, you approved it, and that's all we know. That's just, I'm using that as.
All right, so we move on from planning commission, talk about what council roles are, our expectations of council. So you might as well start that one.
Just looking, are you on 1C or 2A?
2-1.
I thought that's the conversation.
No, we didn't. Okay, well, I considered that 1B, but all right. I think it was a combination.
Yeah, I do too.
There was a combo.
Let's go to,
Yeah.
let's go to 1C, and I'll start at your request.
We move on from planning commission.
This is not something new out of a little bit, maybe new for, you know, new council people and planning commission. I think it's the responsibility of the planning staff. If all of us, it's our decision to make. And I'm always concerned when the salesman of the fact that we are given the information that's going to lead us to the same conclusion. And I am insistent that we get all the nuances and all the facts because it's our decision. And that staff should give us unpolished, unvarnished, so we make the decision. And I can't emphasize that enough.
Harry, I would pick that up, and I think I said it when we were sitting around before we got started. The Joe Friday model, just the facts, ma'am. And I think that's very important. And then all of the pluses and minuses and decisions can happen once we have those facts. So I think that's critical. Second, what Harry just said.
I appreciate the information and the dedication of staff to get us to these points. It's just a sticking point for me is when it comes to the council, I'd like to hear that the recommendation of the planning board is, but it stops at that. simply for the fact is, if it is said, well, staff recommends this, and then we as a council, we have reservations or we vote against, it shows an amount of discord that I don't think we really want to put out for the public. And there again, comes back to the facts. We've heard what the planning commission has said, recommend, deny, or recommend with these concerns or whatever, and staff to give us the facts. And then as that final decision winds up with us, good, bad, or otherwise, we are the authority and we are the ones who will have to take the heat if we make a wrong decision. I agree, I just like to have the facts and let me make that decision.
And Steve, like you said, if we have questions or we want to solicit more information, we have concerns or counterpoint that maybe will help us, we can request that. But we'd like to be the requesters of additional information outside the actual agenda.
And if it's a legal, if we come to the point where we're asking a question that based on legality, clear can give us, so we don't cross that line, but I prefer to hear my answers to these questions directly from the applicant. Bring it to the council, that's they should become prepared to answer any questions or concerns that were risen at the planning commission, because now we've established a policy where those concerns will be related to us. So nobody's caught off guard at that point in time. If we raise the concerns, ask that same questions that you all had, we ask them at the council meeting, the applicant should be able to have that answered for us.
Yeah, I think when we're approving them to do an enormous project that's gonna have a big impact, we ask a fairly simple question. We'd like to be able to think they can answer it rather than not be able to answer, because it helps build credibility to who they are. And I know, that's not a veiled criticism of our staff. I know they're very helpful and they're trying to support these developers, and the developers are in our arena, they're not always in those, so I understand that. But I think we want to hear them answer the question, so we could ask more if we have it, and kind of calibrate their response. Yeah.
I understand it correctly. We don't want to see staff's recommendation.
I want staff to present me with the facts. I don't think their recommendation to approve the project also, because they've given the information to you all. You make that recommendation to the council. The staff, I like them to provide me with the facts that help you get to that. It seems to me if the staff makes a recommendation in there, now we have a third partner in the process when we should only have two. Am I thinking wrong in thinking that?
I'm with you.
I think there's some nuances here.
I want staff to present me with the facts. I don't think their recommendation to.
There's one thing, the planning commission is saying, okay, we voted in favor of this. But it's another thing, seeing staff we want you to approve it. I think that's what Steve's. I don't want to know what this, obviously the staff approves it, but because it's in front of us. They've gone through a lot of processes before it gets there. So they're sold on it before it gets to the planning commission and then gets to the council. But what we have to do, I think, is eliminate the fact that there's, or at least the impression that they're trying to sell us to get to the point where they're about just the facts. And listen, this is a general conversation, and no meant to get against anyone. But if you look at the talking points on this topic, planning staff to identify the negative and the most positive facts. Okay. Example, identifying that Jubilee School intended to sell off 2 sections of the park. So that's not part of what was presented. Well, that's a factor in what's going on. I think that there's a lot of conversations that happen. I've heard, you know, been saying, well, if you don't approve it, we're gonna get sued. Or if you don't approve it, Jasper County's gonna do it. You know, I think that those things, maybe they are factors. They need to be set up, they need to be said in public. Not to me in somebody's office or because if that's gonna be a factor in our minds, then it should be in the public. That should be in the public forum. They should know that Joe, John, or Gene is not voting this because they're afraid it's gonna get, we're gonna get sued. It's afraid that Jasper County's gonna do it over our heads. And that's what I'm talking about, looking the facts out. And not eliminating things like 2 sections of the endorsement. All
So
right.
I think so sitting here and listening to all of you gentlemen speak, and before I even ran this race, I used to follow some of the meetings here. And I came away with the impression that there are 3 factions here in City Hall. We have the planning department, that's one faction, we have the planning commission, that's one faction, and then we go. And somehow, as an ordinary person sitting out, you could kind of sort of sense that there is no cohesiveness in there. It's like and now that I'm here, I've had neighbors ask me, well, why isn't the planning commission putting their foot down and doing this? Well, why is the city council doing this? And why is planning staff answering questions when the developer should be answering these questions when city council asks them or the planning commission asks these questions? Why is staff getting up to answer these questions when the developers should be the ones responding? And I agree with that, because if you're a developer coming in here and you want to put your flag here, then you should know everything about it. So if I have a question, you should be able to answer that question in its entirety, because you're the only one that knows everything about the project. They may not have told staff everything that they needed to hear either, because nobody can get into the minds of another person and try to understand what they're thinking. And you cannot read things into what's not being said. So I think going forward, we need to try to work as one unit. And I think planning staff, and I have had nothing but cooperation from them. I ask information, I get it quick. But I have this, there is an aura of distinct and separateness from us. And we are one. We are working. Our responsibilities are to the citizens. It's our responsibilities are not to each other's committee or council or whatever. At the end of the day, those folks are the ones who are paying our salaries. And that's who our lawyers need to be. So I think, good or bad, we need to have the pros and cons of the development and let us make our decision.
There are times that people do that. For the development. Yeah, I just think you're not allowed to answer the question, but I've seen times where we've approved a project, they come in for an amendment, they come in for a second and third amendment. And now it's become a bait and switch. You know, tell me up front that you want to do this. Don't ask for widgets and come in next time and say, well, no, I didn't really mean that. Oh, I mean, from my perspective, I think that we should be allowed to ask questions because then we can determine what we feel is best for the city. And make those recommendations to council based on the information that's provided to us by the developer.
That's actually a good segue into item number 2, where the question is, council or planning commission need to approve a master plan consistent with PDD, and part A is, where does what's best for the city come into this discussion? So, why don't you lead off with that one, Steve?
The one I'm thinking of was the RV park and manufactured homes down on 17. They came in, they wanted to build an RV park with 70 manufactured homes that were gonna be rentals. So then they came back with an amendment to increase the number of RV units. They came back the third time, and well, we're not gonna have manufactured homes, we're gonna have built them. Gonna sell them. And my question was, why the change? Well, it's cheaper. Well, it wasn't cheaper when you came in, because if it had been, you would have asked for stick-built homes, not manufactured, not rentals. And the stick-built home, because the rentals was gonna be workforce available for housing. Stick-built, when they gave us the price points, that's not workforce price points, I'm sorry. And that's why I voted against it, and I think there was a couple other members on the planning commission at the same time said, no, we don't recommend this change. And when I left here, I was stopped out in the parking lot by the developer, why did you vote against me? Well, I told you why. Don't assault me in the parking lot, because I didn't go with the way you thought or the way it was presented.
Because that also has been one of my biggest worries, and I actually lay awake at night thinking about the development agreements that we write for these different developments that come down the pike. Because after council has done their second reading, it's pretty much a done deal, right? I mean, we can't claw back anything that we think is now not gonna work, so we get it right the first time, like Paul was saying, and then it's done. But my biggest worry is, because I was reading through your recommendations for two of the things there, and I saw the conditions that you have listed for this one, the Argent 2 parcel F, and this one was for the North Oakland multifamily, and there's a bunch of conditions that planning commission put down, and they are great. So my thing is, how stringent are we with including these conditions in a development agreement where we make it so watertight that they don't have room to maneuver and do the things that you just said that they do? Because you and I may not be here 5, 6 years down the road, and that agreement's already a done deal, and the people that come after us are the ones who are going to be dealing with all of that. And just like we are talking now about people, our predecessors, we have to do better. And I think the development agreement is where the choke point is going to be, where we're going to hold the developers. And a development agreement is not just for the developer, it's for their protection as well as the city's protection. And I think that is where we need to tighten everything down so that they cannot deviate and do what they just did. And there should be stipulations in that development agreement that if they do not follow what's in that development agreement, then there are penalties that they're going to have to face that. The fines, I don't know what the legalities are of that, but if we breach it, then we are held responsible. If they breach it, then they are held responsible. We have to do that to prevent issues like what you just said. I understand that.
And everything, all those changes, we went through the example, come back to ultimately the planning commission and the council. So if three people disagree with what you just said, it can be overturned. And that's part of the process. So while I agree with you, there is a process of which change can take place by a majority. And so we're all, just like, let's say, you're off, all five of us are, you know, in our retirement years of 5 different people. Those 5 different people and 5 different planning commission people can change what you're vehemently against. That's part of the, that's part of what we, part of what we deal with.
Yeah.
But I think more importantly, I kind of went past it. What you said first, Val, is specifically number 2 on the back page of this agreement. And at times, and I didn't want to go past this, at times, it appears that the planning department is an advocate for the developer and not a neutral. Obviously, that's going through a lot of people's minds. And I have a suggestion. Because first of all, we as a group are responsible for the public image, particularly those of us on council. Number 2, we don't want to put staff in a position that they look like that. So my suggestion to all 10 of us is to specifically ask our questions to the developer, leave staff out of it, and we'll give, you know, in our direction, part of the reason for this meeting is to tell staff, we want to hear from the developer. We don't want you to be in a position where you look like an advocate. And by coming up and answering questions, even if we ask staff, well, they're going to come up. As I said before, they're already convinced that the project is good. So they're going to come up and appear as an advocate because they are. They went through a lot of process and they're convinced it's a good thing. They have that right. So we should, as a group, don't put them in that position. Ask the developer, and then we'll make sure we tell staff. We ask the developer a question, we want the developer to answer, not you. And that keeps them from having that impression. I know, I've heard it from residents. They're getting that impression. But we have to help them not be put in that position.
We need to realize in this whole thing today, and the planning commission, everything is about that. Developers are in the business to make money. We, as a planning commission and as a council, we are in the business to do what's best for the citizens of Hardyville. Sometimes those businesses, they'll mesh perfectly, and sometimes they won't. But we, in the planning commission, have that ability and that responsibility at times to say no. And we have to remember that. We can't be pressured by anybody or anything into making any decisions that we are not comfortable with. And this is what, to me, this is why we are all here today. Because we feel that we have made some decisions that we weren't completely comfortable with. And these PDDs that we put in place, they're for a long time. They're a legal document between the city and the developer. I agree with the changes that came back 3 times like that. That should not happen, especially in such a short period of time. It just, it rings to me like, okay, this is how we can do this. I mean, you don't have an investment of that type with that much money involved in making snap decisions. If they wanted to do stick built, should have said it right up front. This is what, to me, this is why we are all here today, because we feel that we have made some.
Personally, look at the 2A, where does what is best for the city and the discussion all the time. And if you have to vote, on something, you don't believe it's in your best interest. If I'm sitting in this chair, I vote no. Be damned with the legal thing. Because especially in your case, you got the final decision. If you voted against it, it still has to come back to council. So if I was sitting in your chair and I didn't think it was in the best interest of the city, I don't care. He said, you got to, it's legal, and Trina said it's by law. Oh, no. Because otherwise, what the hell are you sitting there for? And that's what, and that opinion, and the reason for that opinion is what will come to the council. And that's what we're looking, personally, what we're looking for is that. Leave your rubber stamps at home. That's what I would do. And I don't need a rubber stamp.
So, as I understand the planning commission's responsibility is we're supposed to look at a project from the zoning and, if it's part of a greater master plan PDD type thing. If it comes to, like the case of the school, our decision shouldn't be based on, is it appropriate for the school, or if they're signed off. If it meets all those other requirements, then legally I have to say, or I should say yes. But if I vote no, I probably need to caveat it somehow. And, that's where I see the issue, in my mind anyway, with the appropriateness. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that school, what they were gonna do was appropriate, but from all the guidelines that I understand, at least, I have to say yes, because that's the only parameters I have to vote. Am I wrong?
I think you're right. You have to base your judgment on the.
And I think that's why, in that particular one, we voted yes, but we put one of the contingencies was council had to decide whether it's appropriate or not, because you really only have the only deciding factor.
That one got very political. Yeah.
Well, I think we learned a lot of things we didn't know.
I thought we're just, you can make your comment and you get your 3 minutes or whatever, but that was not gonna have a bearing on my vote.
Well, it shouldn't have.
I mean, that's something that county and state has to deal with. Who gets the money and they're getting so much money and that's not part of what we're supposed to do.
That's right.
You have your own opinion on that, but from my standpoint, it wasn't gonna.
And you're right.
There are times when your moral or your idealistic ideas were going to clash with the legality of it. We have to follow the legality. Doesn't mean you can't still voice your own concerns about it. We have to follow the legality of it, and that just precludes right into BI.
Yep.
Right there. I mean, some of the PDDs are 18, 20 years old. And these are allowed within those PDDs. Might not like it, but it's allowed.
I think to prompted that whole discussion and it started really growing out of hand was, I asked a simple question. Was school only aimed at the folks that lived in the East Agent development, or was it open to anybody? And he just talked to anybody, and then administration, all hell broke loose.
Oh, yeah. Then and later.
Huh?
Then and later.
Yeah. The school board members are gonna be very protective of what they have. They didn't have, they should have been a little better prepared, knowing what can and can't be done by the planning commission. And I don't think they were well aware of it. Do I agree with, what their concerns were? Yeah, but there's nothing can be done about it. It fits the area legality. And when I asked that question to the school board representative, I says, well, would you put a school right in there right now? Well, no, there's not enough students there. Well, okay, that answers that question. You know, they're worried about something that they may not be need to worry about for another 10 years. But you guys have to deal with what's there right now.
This larger question, what is it that is our realm of responsibility? What are we allowed to ask? I think that's an example of the problem. I mean, I think that as a planning commission, we were right to ask the questions about, have you talked to the school? Are you keeping in touch with the school district? And we were right in all of us voting to approve it, because legally we couldn't not approve it, but I think that that raising these questions, and the larger question is, what is it really that we can look at and ask about? I mean, the city planning commission and the master plan are supposed to be for the public health, public safety, and general welfare. And, I feel like the area is very, very broad. And even though some of the issues that we'd be talking about are not issues that we might be able to vote on in the end, I still think it serves a purpose, actually two purposes, I think. One is that we're probably raising questions and asking about the very things that the public at large would ask, that they would want information about. And the second thing is, I've actually been pleasantly surprised at how often during those discussions, if people speak directly to the developer would say, oh, well, I'll do that. Even though I'm not required to do that, yeah, I'll do that. And, I think having the general discussion, does achieve a purpose. In the end, we are constrained as what we can legally consider to move forward. But I don't think that those discussions are generally out of bounds. And one example is, you talk about the development agreement. Well, we don't see the development agreement, and we're generally told we shouldn't be asking questions about the development agreement. But I don't know why. I mean, these things very often, for example, I'm concerned sometimes that we're looking at something and we're approving, recommending it to council, and there's language in there that they don't have to do most of the things that are being presented, because there's language for outs. I think it would be worthwhile to ask that question. Not that we can change anything, but I think, the broader approach is the better approach.
I'm gonna ask questions of the Jubilee about the unused portion. And they were very big. That's a lot of ground. What is your use for? Well, future use. Well, what does that mean? And, as these things are approved, I would like to see them say something. Well, if it was gonna be for housing, then say housing. Can you come back and request a change? Yes. But future use can cover anything that's allowed under the zoning. Multi-use zoning is broad with that. I think, that's the neighbors and everybody else that lives there has that right to know what could be on that piece of property.
That goes back to from
What is your use for? Well, future use.
just the ones that you want to hear.
Once I'm ferreted that out of them, they're gonna sell 2/3 of the place off for housing. It's like, I felt like we should send them back to go rewrite their document, so they said what they wanted to do. They came in with a school, but 2/3 of their agenda was property development, selling it off for housing. And it's like, I would like to have sent them packing and say, bring it back when you're actually gonna tell us what you're doing.
The school would take 12 years to build out, according to what they had said that day. It won't take them 12 years to develop the homes or the apartments or whatever else they do. So was the apartments or the selling of the homes their primary focus, and the school would fit into their narrative, or was it the other way around? That we don't know at this time, and I agree. There should be something in there that makes them their future use.
Well, they'd have to come back to the planning commission, correct? With what they wanted to do with that additional.
Well, that's
So
what-
we come back,
That's what they did tell us
Yeah.
when we asked at one of the workshops, I think, we asked, what are you planning on doing with that old green thing over there? And they did tell us what it was, but they said then, I was told that they would have to come back for approval in order to do anything with that, with that
by
piece of
then,
property.
by then the camel's got its nose under the tent.
Exactly, but that's, I love that. But so this is where I'm saying, with the development agreement, I mean, can we not have language in there that precludes this kind of stuff?
It occurred to me afterwards that there's this big pie, and they only wanted one slice out of it for their purposes. Maybe that's what should have been brought to us, the slice. We want to build a school right here. Yeah, we own this other stuff, and we'll do something with that later and come back to you. Give them approval for an initial master plan that was for the slice they really wanted to then build a school.
If the developer is a housing developer, you will know that up front. This, they came as a school and then wanted to do the homes. I'm uncomfortable with that. If they would have said right up front that we wanted to do homes over there, okay, then you understand that. If the developer comes and says, I have these 300 acres here, I'm gonna build homes there, okay, that's allowed and that's what we're going to be. But this, well, I wanna build a school on this portion. I think I may wanna build homes over here. I don't like that so much. I'd like to know, I'm approving the school. The other piece of ground without any future thought is tough.
I don't see any way around it though,
Well,
because it would still fit into the whole plan for that area.
but could we have had that application rewritten specifically to talk about the parcel they were gonna build the school on and leave the other parcel in whoever owned, however they bought the land, leave that out and only bring the master plan in for what they're gonna do now.
Well, even if they did, either way, they have to come back a second time to get approval on the houses. And there's no way to say no on that either, that I see. Because it's still part of the master plan for the whole area. How would you say no to it?
right, it couldn't.
And so even if he came in with an ulterior motive that he didn't speak of, either way, it can happen. That's kind of the way I looked at it, was, yeah, okay, they can do that, there's nothing to say no. There was no reason to say no
Is
either way.
that parcel zoned residential or is it multi-use?
It's in PDD, so it's.
Yeah, it's part of the original PDD that they can do pretty much what they want with it.
And that's,
Except the strip club.
Yeah, once you're doing something within PDD, I see pretty much what you're talking about.
you're right.
Well, my question would be, why are you being, why are you withholding?
And that's, I would,
There's deception.
it is.
First of all, that doesn't make me comfortable. And number two, I wanna know why. Why is it, why are you being deceptive? Why are you manipulating to get this approval? Because it's no big deal. If they came in and said, I want to build apartments, we wouldn't object. It's part of the PDD. There's 9,500 units that are allowed there. So there's no reason to be deceptive. Then that makes me want to know, why are you being deceptive? And now it goes back to, again, the public perceiving that, something more is going on here. It certainly has my perception of, I want to know what's going on here. And seems like there's no good reason.
And had you known, had that been obvious up front, we might have been more focused on roads in and out and safety and those sorts of things, then, oh, this is just a loop road for the.
Broad language in the PDD has every one of those, that we have to look at. But so many of these older ones we have to live with. We just have to be able to make the best we can.
John, I don't think any of us lived here when most of us.
Well, we're gonna come back to the question here. Do we need to approve the master plan if it's consistent with the PTD? Which would seem in this case.
Well, you can look up my votes. South Point, Interstate 95. I voted no. I vote no, because I didn't think it was the location was not in the best interest of the city.
You have a little more freedom to do that. In our case,
I think actually it's less,
We're just making
because we're just an advisor to the council, they're the ones who.
You know, they're not, if you vote, you're not gonna get sued.
Right.
I vote no. I can get sued, according to rumors I've heard. Okay, but is that in the self-interest of whoever that person is? You know, that's like putting a stick in the bear's eye, you know, why would you do that, especially if you got other projects that you want to get approved? So, again, if that's a factor, that should be discussed. The public should be aware of that. So at least they know that we're voting on something and we have to vote because of that. Or we're voting on it because we're afraid of getting sued and not be some subterfuge.
If you all have reservations on something before it comes to council, and like we discussed earlier, and if they're noted, and they can be our concerns too, and we can ask those same questions.
Yeah.
Get that same answer from the developer that he gave you. So, and there again, would that have worked with the Gateway? Very possibly.
That's what I was gonna say. I think we, even though it fits within the PDD, if we have reservations, we can vote no. And that's still my right to vote no.
I mean, I think
You
that.
can't take my right away from me. You can't force me to vote yes on something.
I think that's kind of the takeaway here. If we don't think something is in the best interest of the city, we can say no. Council can ignore our concerns if they feel that they don't have a legal standing to take the same position we did.
Putting us on notice.
Yeah.
That's important.
That construction warehouse.
Yeah.
That construction warehouse that Pulte wants to allow on parcel F. It's really a dumb location when all the construction is gonna be on the other side of the street. And all those trucks are gonna come in and out of there, on and off Argent Road, where it would be much better if it was somewhere nested in where all that construction's happening, so that they could stay off of Argent Road.
You can cut down on the number of trucks.
Yeah, pig's eye. Oh, all right, so.
It's a good question you asked here. What? There's projects. There's been plenty of them. You got two of them right here in the last year and a half. That we're not questioning the project, we're questioning the location. And we're gonna have a second vote on this Pulte thing. And I still object to the fact that their entrance is directly across from their apartment. You know, okay, I have no problem, I have problems, but because it's Argent Boulevard. But if that's what they want to put there, and we specifically, when we approved the last section, that they would not put residents there. So, I can deal with that. If you're gonna have left turn lanes with these big trucks and you're gonna do it directly across from a street that has a history of accidents, I still have a problem with it. And so, to your point, is it in the best interest of the city? I'm gonna fight to get that that entrance changed, because I think it's a lousy choice. Have your development, but don't we have an obligation of public safety? And if we all feel that that's a bad place for the entrance, if we feel, and I've asked you at the last meeting, I was watching, making sure it's right in and right out. And that was a positive thing, because, you know, then I don't see why each individual, if you wanna say no, say no. Still majority rules, still majority rules. And you know, to give up your vote, any one of the 10 of us, to give up our vote, because we have to, and we feel it's against the public interest. I'm gonna vote no, bring the lawyers in later, and I'll testify.
The fear of a lawsuit, we can't let that guide us, because we can be sued for saying no, and we can also be sued for saying yes. So it's
Anybody can sue anybody for anything.
Litigious society.
but that's something that, you know, you have to realize too. We could be voting yes on this, and it just takes a little bit more concern as we come along. And sometimes I look at it, yeah, you're bound because the PDD says it's allowed. It sticks in my throat, but sometimes we can't do it, but doesn't prevent us from voicing our concerns. It doesn't stop the council from voting no.
Well, and you have extracted some conditions on your approvals too. You know, on the Okatee Crossings Apartments, you extracted some concessions about separation and fences and that sort of thing. So, I mean, it's not like you walked away feeling terrible about the whole thing.
No.
I mean, you got some things that were positive in terms of the longevity of the city and the residents in that area. You know, it's the same thing with this construction warehouse. Maybe there's something else that could go there, this developer. Or maybe there's, or other concessions that you can extract that better the conditions for the city.
We ask questions all the time, and you will do too, concerning traffic. And there's a very intensive traffic study done, and yeah, in the presentation they were made, and a lot of information, tons of information, and it's all good information. But the lacking point of it was, if we talk about what's best for the city, when I asked the traffic study, I said, well, did you take into account we added 1,500 homes that Sun City will be completing in the next 2 or 3 years there? No, because they're only looking at the here and now. And I think that's something that the planning commission and the council, we have to look at the future. Because this is the future we're gonna live with. And the people that we represent are gonna have to live with. If you, a planning commission has concerns, no problem, listen to them and you know, if I disagree with you, I'll tell you. But if I agree with you, I'm gonna tell you that also.
I think the planning commission is our first line of defense. Have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. A project comes out the gate from the planning department. I think your eyes are the first eyes on that project. You see what does not work or work. I think you guys have that responsibility to let city council know, because then that gives us a heads up. Hey, these minds looked at it and this is what they came up with. Maybe we need to pay more attention there. So I think out of all of us here, I think you guys right out the gate, you're the first line of defense. That's how I look at it.
And I think that as a result of this discussion, I think we would feel more empowered to say, hold it, I don't like this for these reasons.
Right.
And council, we'd really appreciate it if you would consider them.
You have the option to table a vote on something brought to you. You're waiting for. Do you have to vote yes or no on the day it's presented to you?
No, we have to put one or two of them off over the last couple of
But
years.
we have to, like you guys, we have to have a specific date. Yeah, and that's fine, but I mean, you know, that's something that nobody should feel pressured into having to make a yes or no vote, whether it's you, it's your planning commission, or us as a council. You feel uncomfortable with it, you always ask, to delay a vote on it until the information that you feel comfortable with is gathered. And that may be something that we all need to look at and take advantage of.
We would have to take it up.
Then that would be,
We can't put it out back in 3 meetings. We have to take it.
It has to be the next meeting.
but that's 30 days away that you got it.
Date
We
specific,
had that
right?
situation when a developer didn't show up.
Right.
And there's no one that answered the questions we had, so we mentioned, and I don't know whether that's possible to us or not, that if the developer doesn't show up to ask, in front of the commission to answer questions, you just table them.
Right.
We're not gonna,
Right, and if we say the developer is the one that should answer the questions, then they'd better be there or they can't expect
or their
an
representative.
outcome that favors them. You know, so,
We've had that happen, yeah.
yeah, so we've talked a couple of times about, you know, being hamstrung by PDDs that predate most of us. So one of the things that we came up with,
Mr. Chairman.
sure,
One other thing. About what is best for the city. Can we get sued? We put something in a location, inadequate road structure, and someone gets arrested and died. Right? What's in the city's best interest? It's in the best interest not to create a hazard. It's gonna end up somebody dying and the city gets sued because we didn't do that. It's rhetorical, but I think it's number one complaint.
Get your lawyers.
Watch TV.
Yeah. You trip over one walking through the van.
All right, so
I think there are certain legal things that we've discussed here. I think as chair of this meeting, if there's any point at which you wanted legal clarification, you know, I think ask the attorney.
Yeah. So we had talked about being hamstrung by older PDDs. One of the things that came up is that when people come to you for master plans under PDDs, you write a development agreement. You know, so is that another bite at the apple for you to allow you to, again, extract concessions or understandings? And can your development agreement say something effective? If you don't move in such and such a time period, we pull the plug and you start over again.
I don't think we can pull the plug. Ron, I'm asking you this directly now. Once the time limit on something is basically just on the building permit.
It's all right. The zoning, the master plan is part of the zoning, goes with the land, there's not, any kind of limit on that. The development agreement sits on top of the PDD. You don't do a separate development agreement when you're talking about the master plan, it's the same development agreement that's already been in place. Those typically per state law and Crenica on that have some limitations, but it's not on the zoning of the land, it's on the agreements that were made under that deed.
So a development agreement can't have sunset to it. Is that what we're saying?
It does.
Do you want me to answer?
Sure.
So development agreements are contracts for the development ability. What you're dealing with is specifically zoning. PDDs are zoning. You can't control zoning requirements in a development agreement. They're two different controls. So the development agreements also are for specific periods of time based upon how much acreage it encompasses. And that's in the state statute. So 0 to 25 acres or 0 to 5 years, 25 to, I think it's 250 go to 10 years. And then beyond that, you have 30-year agreements. And then you're allowed to negotiate renewals of it. Now, as far as a provision, I just want to understand your question. When you say sunset, like require progress without resubmitting the project,
Yeah,
are you saying like you have to, for example, apartments have to be put here within 5 years, and if not, our approval expires?
Yeah, I mean, council does the
Can't do
development
that.
agreement, not me, but you're saying that,
You can't do that because the development of a project, as far as like when they get their permits to do things, is determined by market conditions, so we can't say that it's not allowed to say there's a violation of the development agreement because they didn't apply for a permit or develop the property within a certain time period. Well, if the agreement itself expires, then yes, they'd have to come back and get another development agreement. But I mean, I've never seen that happen. Usually the city and the developer will agree to do some sort of extension on it or an amendment to that development agreement to account for what the conditions are. But that's not gonna change your zoning. Your zoning's in
well, I
place
understand.
as it
I'm
is.
just saying, I'm asking for council on a sunset over the top of some of these PDDs that are really, really old. And I think what I'm hearing is you can't do a darn thing.
You can't, but the thing is, if they're going to change what, they're wanting to do something that's outside of the zoning, then they have to come back for extension. It has to be changed.
Can I ask you a question about that? You know, the state statutory language is a limitation. It can't be more than 5 years or 10 years or 30 years, isn't that right?
If they put the terms are for it based on the acreage of the land.
But it's a limitation, in other words, it could be shorter, it just can't be longer.
It's a mandated time
It
period.
must be 30 years.
It is X number. Now, the 30-year agreement, that's for beyond a certain acreage and that you negotiate up to.
Yeah, well, you're saying you couldn't put contingent language in it, say, we're agreeing to a 10-year agreement with the contingency that you must
Show
submit a
progress.
plan within X period of time.
You can't make the term contingent on progress.
But you could, I mean, you write it into the development agreement for whatever you're agreeing to in the development agreement.
You can't require them to develop the property. You can't mandate time limits on their development.
You're saying you couldn't include a contingency in the contract that says, for example, this provision is contingent upon applying for X permit within a certain period of time. I mean, it's an agreement between two parties.
Correct, but you can't, because their applications for permits are based upon their market conditions. They're not required to get permits. This just gives them the right to get.
And that's one of the languages that's typically included. It says, you know, all the things you're agreeing to are based on market conditions and other things. That language, for example, is that required in the contract, or is that's just the, I mean, I realize that
Okay, so-
that's the general standard that's
Yeah,
used.
no, there are, I think it's 10 or 12 mandatory provisions for development agreements pursuant to state law. The local government planning act requires us to do that.
So Brenna was very nice enough to put me one of these together, and I spent part of my day reading this yesterday. And the contents of the development agreement that you were talking about just now talks about, the duration. Development must be projected to take place over a period authorized by SC Code 631-31-40. The termination date may be extended by the agreement. So isn't that?
Saying to mandate,
Yeah, to mandate,
I understand the question would be
gotcha.
that you're mandating development, and if that development doesn't occur within a certain period of time, then the term changes.
Okay,
Is
and
that-
Yeah,
then,
you wouldn't be mandating it, you would be making it a condition
a
of the
condition,
contract,
correct.
a contingent.
Yes, yeah, so one of the other, number 10 in here, as far as time, it says it has to specify time and schedule of completion of the entire development or any phase. Local government may extend time upon request and upon a showing of good cause by the developer. Okay.
We can't
Pull the plug if
pull
they
the
do
plug on
nothing.
it.
That's
We can
fine.
extend it, but we can't stop.
Right.
Violation, because if the development doesn't occur in accordance with that schedule, you can't say that they violated the development agreement. It's not considered a default.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So then what is it, what do you consider that if it's not the, I understand default, but, what would you, I mean, wouldn't they have to cure that? We wouldn't have to give them notice and
Because it's not a default, you don't have to.
okay,
You can't cure something that's not a
that's not
default.
there, okay.
Let me ask a question. I think Mr. Cronin was still on the commission when we approved an animal hospital down behind the cancer center. Nothing has happened down there. So we can't pull the plug on that and say, hey, you've done nothing.
What are you wanting to pull, like the zoning? The permit? There's a different, there are, if they already have a building permit, then there's time periods for that.
But these developers come in and they get approval to do something and then it sits. And someone else there may be someone out there that will come in and develop it now.
At what point, are you talking about like the report, you're saying they received their
I don't know if they've even,
approval?
I don't know if they've even got any permits. We,
Okay, so if there's no permits, there's nothing to pull. If you've already applied for a permit, then that's a process that the city has some control over.
so
But you can't force someone to come develop that land.
Rezone.
What is the zoning?
I believe it was for,
agricultural.
it was no, it was changed. It was general commercial and then they did change it. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was just a zoning change.
But it's not item specific to,
They could do anything under that zoning district.
that's the question. So you're right, this gentleman can sit with that and hope somebody else comes along to buy it from him. And it's developers, it's how they operate.
You got a good example of the plumbing reply. Mike, I talked about that, how many times, Mike?
Oh, the reason I asked that one comes to mind.
As long as it fits within our zoning, there's nothing.
I mean, they haven't even, I don't think they even got the draft.
Yeah, they did, they have cut the grass.
Well, so we've pretty much figured out that we can't really sunset a project.
No.
You know, and we have some of them that have sat there for many years. When Mike came in, he got, some of them started, and there was one I lived
A
in.
lot of these PDDs, Mike has to live with.
Yeah, these are, I don't know what the true answer is. You're right, this gentleman can sit with that and hope somebody else comes along to buy it from him. It's developers, it's how they operate.
Yeah, let's move it along.
Where were we?
Let's go for the minutes. And see, this is a simple question. We have come up with a new recording method. Use the council meeting early recording. And that's going to, I don't know if Mike can explain it. That's going to make the recording and the compilation of minutes that much easier.
Exactly, isn't that?
It transcribes the verbal minutes into words.
Oh, it's like word for word.
It's actually
Right.
recording.
Okay.
And personally, I know what we're gonna get as a council. The issue seems to be what you want as a planning commission.
Yeah, we're gonna get an hour and a half worth of.
Well, what I'm suggesting to you is whatever, you tell what you want. And I would like to see something that's the ability to understand what took place, you know, in the minutes and.
So what is council gonna do for minutes? Are you gonna say the transcription is the minutes? What do you record for minutes?
I don't think we do that. You have a 40, 50.
No, that's what I'm saying, what are we gonna get? We haven't gotten it yet, this was just explained to us recently, what are we gonna get?
You want to generate yourself.
So you're, right. You'll be able to do, depending on how you will be able to do a transcript. This software will do a transcript of your minutes. Remember, usually official minutes per Robert's Rules of Orders is only the official action. It's not all the commentary, it's not all the discussion. It's an official record of what took place at that meeting on the official action. So, again, if you guys want something different in your minutes, just tell the planning staff what you want. If you want a transcript, once you get the software, we'll be able to push a button, it'll give a transcript of your proceedings. You could get that draft, you know, for minutes, or that could go to the council.
That's the thing, like, I was the one that really brought minutes to it. I understand, Robert's rules say blah, blah, blah. That's the minimum. That's the minimum. That minimum does not, when I go back and read the minutes, August, September, October, November meetings, it doesn't tell me crap of what we did.
It doesn't provide a synopsis of the discussion, and that's what we.
So, the council reads those minutes, they don't know what our stipulations were. And that's where the rub comes.
Seeing our current, like, when we get it, what we use it. Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's pretty basic.
It's pretty basic, but I have used it at times because I want to follow up, because we have two hearings. You only have one, but we have two. So I've taken the minutes from the first one and printed them out and made notes so that I could follow up and make sure who do this, said this. So they're very helpful. Is that what you want to see? I think what Mike's message is, and I think certainly my vote of the council would support. Whatever.
Well, I think if Jeff votes no, and I vote no, it should state in here why, that we voted no and why. So that the council knows, hey, you know, it wasn't unanimous, the planning commission wasn't unanimous in bringing this forward. You had two dissenting votes and here's why. And I think that's, and having talked to Steve, I think that's what you guys want.
Yeah, I'd like to see the minutes as Mike has said that, but on each vote, I'd like to see, you know, was it 3-5, was it unanimous, however it was. And then under each one of them, what the concerns were for whoever voted no. Or even if you voted yes, you want to share those concerns. I don't need to know verbiage of everything that was discussed in there. But to reach that point, I just need to know what your concerns are, why you voted the way you did.
So a synopsis.
It's a summary, and that's what we get now as council. You know, we don't get a verbatim. It's a 4-hour meeting, so. But you get a summary, and it does, the summary say, John Carroll said, you know, but. And Bo said, C, you know, and it is down there exactly what you said.
That's what we're at.
Yeah, so I think that's what you want. You know, I certainly would support the administration and staff. Do what you want, whatever you want, you should do.
That gives us the chance to say, ask some of the same questions with your concerns, how you voted that way, to ask the developer when he's in front of us also.
And those minutes should be part of our package. Meaning our package, meaning the council's package, just like our minutes are part of our package. Yours should be.
So that actually leads into the next.
Sure. I think one of the issues that we've had is what gets into the minutes, what is. somebody says something, makes a sentence, and, well, that's not in there. Well, who makes that determination whether that should be in there or shouldn't? I understand what you're saying about a summarization, and that's great. But I know on the commission on several meetings, somebody says, I made this statement, it's not in there. Did it need to be in there? Was it part of the yes or no on the recommendation? I mean, at what point do we not put something in there versus put it in there? Yeah, I mean, you guys talked about having verbatim everything that's said. I mean, that's, to me, that's ridiculous. But I'm saying we've had that contention on the planning commission.
But don't you, when we get to the council, and we have minutes to approve every meeting from the previous meeting, and anybody make a motion in second, and anybody can add, subtract, or revise the minutes. So we go through that same process. And it's for instance, Steve, the minutes didn't say that you left to go to the minute, but you feel that should be in there. You can make that part of the motion, right?
Well,
You're making it.
That's solid. If you feel, anybody feels that there's something that wasn't in the synopsis that you feel should be in there, you can make that part of the motion. And if 3 of your fellow members agree with you, it gets put in them.
I think what the problem is who determines? When you listen to the recording, who determines what's important and what isn't? It shouldn't be a member of staff that determines what's important to us. That should be our determination.
When you write the minutes, how do you determine what's important?
If it's relative to what it is, based on your approach, it goes in there. Now, sometimes we'll have the same comments are made by each member of council. Repeating it 5 times is unnecessary. So we go in there, as long as the thought is there, it's in the minutes. We don't do verbatim minutes a year per day.
And we wouldn't want to read them.
Nobody will read them, but the honors and the honors, that just won't happen. But if the comments that are being made by each member of council are the same, there's no point in repeating the same thing 5 times.
But if
So it would be whatever member of council, whether it be the mayor or the mayor pro tem, whoever made the comment, that will go in.
But if Jeff asks the developer, okay, you don't have playgrounds or open space. All that comes out in the minutes is that Commission Member Foreman questioned the developer.
Well, that's not how I understand it, okay, because what will happen is if Mr. Foreman has a question, the question will be put in the minutes. So when we say, whether it was Commission Member Foreman asked the developer or whatever the question was, the answer goes in the minutes. But if the same question is asked repeatedly by every member, it's not gonna go in 5 times, it's gonna go in 1 time. And oftentimes it will be, staff will be responding to some of the questions that are asked. And that will go in there, it will say, Director Snowden responded with whatever the answer was, or the developer responded with whatever the answer given. But it's not gonna go in 5 different times.
And I wouldn't expect it to.
And I think that is similar to how minutes were presented prior to September. And then there have been times when drafts have been put out, and you specifically said, I think we ought to take that section out. It really wasn't germane to the decision. So,
Well, because of the time frame, you don't approve your minutes till the next meeting. We don't have that luxury we need a synopsis before we can vote. How about we live with a synopsis, but if any of the commission members have a concern, you just say out loud to be noted in that synopsis, give it to us, Commissioner Talbot, request this concern be noted. every one of you could put that in there. And then when we get that synopsis, I can see what the concerns are. You can vote on your minutes a month later.
So is there any reason we couldn't seek to have a draft of the minutes issued within, pick a time, 2 weeks? If you guys are gonna now meet at 22 days, have a draft available in 14 days, you could at least look at whether they're approved or not. You've got a draft which ought to have most of our concerns and decisions available for you to look at.
I want all of your decisions and all of your concerns. The other verbiage, I don't really need to look at. I just need those to inform me, because they're, again, the same questions the developer may not even answer your question, but by the time it comes to us, I expect him to have an answer. I rely on your expertise and your knowledge to get it to the point where it comes to council.
So should we seek to get our minutes drafted up in a couple of weeks? Question. You guys are gonna now meet at 22 days.
Who has the minutes? The reason I'm asking that is, what is the feasibility of that? I mean, I don't understand the process of who's doing the minute, and if it's
It's a
feasible.
difficult process with the.
Who does it, you?
The planning tech.
Okay, so would that be-
Katie and I review them after she initially does them, and, I did want to add this, Lori. In September, August, when all the questions started, we talked about getting Lori to train so that everyone is doing minutes exactly the same, and so that was our suggestion at that time.
Well, I was asking about the feasibility of that, because
It's gonna be difficult.
as the new lorry system that we just voted on, I'm gonna name it the lorry system.
It's gonna end up being verbatim minute.
That's what I call it, the lorry system.
It's verbatim. So there will be the ability to have the minutes transcribed verbatim from every meeting that. So that is possible.
So then I guess the next challenge is gonna be to condense your 40 pages a minute into the four. Really synopsize what happened and provides backup should the issue ever come before you again, which is what comes to us every now and then, I guess you guys do. You do something and then the developer comes back, wants to do pink instead of purple. I mean, it's good to have those comments so that, oh, okay, this is what we talked about at the time, you know.
Throw out the suggestion that we kiss and just keep this simple. I mean, personally, minutes that come out with the council are outstanding. I have no issue with the minutes. They summarize it. It's a good couple-page summary of a long meeting. And I would suggest to the planning commission, whoever does it, that same philosophy and technique you use for your minutes as well. And I would ask, we get them in 2 weeks. We get them, so the February 17th minutes are in our packet for this week. Again, if I was you, I'd ask for that same 2-week turnaround time, so it can be put in the council's packet. Now, again, the timing's a little different. If you have your meeting the second Wednesday, that's not gonna come to the council for first reading on 8 days from now. It's gonna come, first reading will not be 8 days, but 22 days. What you're asking for is, instead of a month, you're asking for 22 days.
And so they can be presented as draft minutes. Since we will not.
But they would have to be draft because you haven't approved.
Right, we haven't had a meeting.
Because they haven't been approved.
We can't do
Your-
what they have
because
to
what
say.
your packet is public information, so the minutes have to be approved to be an official record. What
They get
happened-
draft minutes,
They all get their draft minutes, so they can review
and
them.
how do they get them?
I don't know how they get them, but they can receive their draft minutes whenever you determine them to get. But for those minutes to be given to the council as a record of the planning commission's meeting, they have to be approved.
That brings us back to the synopsis. Can we get a synopsis?
Yes, you have the right, so you have the right under our code to create plans and reports. Relating to development. So what you could do is create some sort of report with the bullet points.
So we have the
That's
right.
different from your minutes, right? Like it's now, from what I'm hearing, you may have questions and concerns about each item that comes before you, right? They might be they're just bullet points that we like this, we don't like this, we have questions about A, B, and C. That can be something that the planning commission itself generates and sends to the council. But it's not your minutes.
So literally, that is the content of the minutes, you know, and if we choose to call them a synopsis, so be it, Lord. You know,
So we as a council have the right to ask for a report from the planning commission before our first reading.
They have the right to make a report and submit it out to public agencies.
Right. So, and if that just coincides to the draft minutes, that's okay. Draft, or, you know,
But please include specific concerns.
Yeah.
Because it's all part of your, part of the draft.
One other thing, when we get our members send changes and it comes to us,
so be it, Lord. You know,
we should have a type of several changes. I want to know what those changes are. We don't find out. But if Mark made a change to the minutes, I think we all should know what that change was.
I'll tell you what I do when I have something I have to say. See every member of the council.
all right, simple enough.
That's.
I
what we
have
used to do.
a thought. I know, Brennan, you've been trying to train everybody to be able to take minutes. You know, I understand that. You don't know who's gonna show up what day and, you know, who's able to do it. Is there a possibility that Lori could pass on her knowledge? Or have you done that before?
That was the intent.
Okay.
In August and September, when all of this first came up, was Lori, we were hiring our new planning tech at that time. Lori was going to train her. Then we had different opinions and different questions about the minutes, and that never happened. But Lori has agreed to, because we knew that the council minutes were.
Yeah, because I've seen the council minutes and they, you know, they tell pretty much the story. That if we can, it would make sense to me too, within the city to have consistency from meeting to meeting. Lori, you're the guru.
We got a couple minutes.
What someone's comment was, typically what happens when someone makes a motion, the motion is they approve the minutes with the change, and it's usually cited in that motion what the changes are that have been asked. Yeah. So then you know what the changes
What I'm saying is, I get the minutes Friday before our meeting, and I see something, and I send a text to the planning staff, you know, this is wrong in the minutes. But when the minutes come to us, it says, oh, well, it's been updated. But it doesn't say what the update was. I just wanna know.
When you see the minutes, when someone makes a motion to approve the minutes, they will typically say, we approve the minutes with the following changes. Whatever changes, those changes will be incorporated in the revised minutes that are gonna be approved.
Steve, I think what the mayor said is that if Jeff or Jeff
We're gonna do it the way we
look at the minutes and have change of direction, they just copy all five of us, and then when we get there, we know what the changes are.
We had, and we told them.
So that, There, that's correction.
Now, it comes to Katrina. What are we being allowed, what can we be privy to prior to you doing the minutes? And what I don't understand with Trina, we didn't finish the conversation. If I, as member of council, can go on to the page and look at video, why can't I see it before
If they're
they
saying,
approve?
if you're saying it's their official right to the council, then they have to approve it, because one of the, or a majority of them have to approve it. You can't have an ordinance or a resolution. The official voice of the council is something that 3 of you have voted on,
But
right? That's,
But
they're saying this is their
this is
position.
this is a synopsis of something that's already in the public. So couldn't you, because satisfy any legal requirements, send them in advance, as they get the minutes in advance, and CC the council? It's a public document. As soon as you send it to them, it's a public document.
Not until it's.
All the way. It's still a public document, is it not? You send it to them, it's a public document. You could be he could be FOIA'd and he'd have to give you that email for the, I don't understand
I'm not
why.
saying you can't get it. I'm saying if you were going to make it a part of your approval. Part of the official record. Because what I'm hearing that what you're wanting to do is have all these questions, comments, and concerns that you will make a part of your decision process, that becomes a part of the packet that comes to you for your approval.
It's information, it's no different than if I went on the video and watched the
You said it
video.
on the meeting, it's gonna be the same outcome.
You're looking for information in order to make our decision as intelligent as possible.
So who's gonna create this document? Who creates
Whoever
it?
creates
It's
the
not your,
document.
right, so it's not your planning commission, it's a member of staff that's
Yeah.
summarizing it. Right, but then they have to approve because they're not the ones generating the document.
It's
Right
simply,
from the video, you're hearing what they're saying.
we don't say it's official, we say initial planning report. For this month.
Did we approve it by email?
They're not meeting, right?
No, the minutes were, no, hang on, the minutes were mailed out to us. Did we approve them by email?
For your meeting, you have to have a meeting.
I
You have to have a
I'm
meeting.
failing to understand why something that goes out to, this is just reading.
You're saying because the video is already out there.
I can watch the video, I can attend your meeting,
But I
and I
can't
can
read
base
it.
my decision on those two,
Can't
but if
read
I
it.
have it written, I can't.
When that sentence official adopted record of the planning commission saying this is an initial report. We got this project from the
This is
planning,
what's going to the planning commission.
don't call planning commission, to the planning staff. I don't-
Yeah, it's going from staff to planning commission for approval at the next meeting.
Go do something, we're gonna be sitting 2 to 3 months out past, something coming to the planning commission before we can even vote on it. If we're gonna sit and wait for the minutes to be approved a month later, then we go a week or 2 out. We've gotta find a quicker way to.
What if you just create the minutes? You got one file that's the minutes, that's us. When the minutes, it's a draft report or initial report from the planning commission. It says exactly the same thing, but you can make it a document that can go into step. We just call it reports.
Just change the language.
And what happens, and then one of you has an amendment to it, one of you looks at it and says, that's really not what we said. But then that's already gone to council. They've already made consideration based on something that may not be what you said.
We're not unique here. Does anyone know what someone else does? I mean, I'm sure there's other jurisdictions that have the same situation.
I always had this.
And
until it went back to the next, board. Where I came from, we relied on a synopsis and we relied on concerns.
Why don't we run this up the tree to MASC? They're always willing to help.
Growing up in a military environment, I used to hear people, don't tell me what I can't do, tell me how I can do it. That's what I'm asking, how can you do it?
That's a good suggestion. Tell us how we can get the information. In a legal way.
You have your video and then there's a transcript of the video. In between, before you have your approval, in between time period.
Not very time efficient for the
No.
council now.
I just fail to see how we can base our vote on watching it or, reading
Getting
it,
a trans-
but we can't have minutes of that.
So wait a second, so why can't we just get a transcript of their meeting? I mean, it's open to the public, we just get a transcript of the meeting and
Well, the
finish
transcript, the
story.
transcript could be 50, 60 pages.
Exactly.
Well, we're just gonna have to wait through that until we find a solution to it.
The nice thing of this new system, you'll get like a agenda, right? So you may not have to sit there. If you wanna look at just one specific item, you can click to it now. It'll have like chapter bookmarks. Like, like scroll and search in it, which makes it a lot more efficient.
How do you know it's important for you to wade through it?
Another thing is, I mean, the council's gonna have a workshop, the first reading and a second reading. So they will get your official minutes before they finish that process.
So let me make a suggestion. So, because at some point, we have to be finished with this meeting, okay? The resolve that we all want minutes that's the equivalent to what council done the same way. Does everybody agree that that's what you want as minutes? You want the same kind of minutes the council gets for their meetings. And then I suggest that we get a synopsis of your concerns, which we started doing in the interim until you approve the operation. That we get at least as Steve said, synopsis of what your concerns are. And we started doing that, and I think that's helpful. So that, and then, before we get to second reading at the latest, we'll see the minutes. And council, if we do, it's important because there's a lot of vibes going on. We table the first vote until we get the minutes from the planning commission. We have that option as well. If we feel we just haven't had a full summary, we haven't had a chance to watch it on the video, that's always another option for us.
We don't have to be rushed.
Where's the new system gonna be starting?
Hopefully the next couple of months.
Oh, could that kind of time for you?
Yeah.
The new system is not going to give us what we
Trained, so next couple of months.
We don't want, the council doesn't want a verbatim transcript. We're not gonna, we have so much to read prior to the council meeting. Reading 50 pages of minutes, we're still going to get, right? We're still going to get what we get now.
Probably going to take the transcript from to us and read through it, just pull out the necessary ums and all that.
So we're gonna get basically what we're getting.
Condensed version.
And we can then give, I assume we can now, Mike, we can give the planning commission the
Every
same
board and
type
commission
of.
we have, absolutely.
And then prior to getting it, can we get maybe a little more detailed summary of what you started giving us in terms of?
I think so, Harry, I gotta look, I'm pretty sure that we can get any.
Okay, so if that's acceptable to everybody, and let's work with that. And if that's not working, we'll come back. I think the point for us as a council, I'm speaking for myself, is that we want you to know, we will support whatever, you know, you want us to support something, let us know, talk it out. And, you know, we're all part of the same team. And I think that was one of the things we were gonna accomplish today, is make sure that you get minutes that you're comfortable. And we get a chance eventually.
Well, it sounds to me like we put a time limit on staff, you know, like the meetings, minutes. Oh, it was, didn't drop. In 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Yeah. I don't wanna say a number that.
I would say, suggest to take a little bit of pressure off staff. You're not gonna prove it. We're gonna start hearing 2 weeks. So why don't you do that for that next 2 weeks?
I work with Mr. Seymour, we'll work. I can't answer.
You don't have an unlimited staff.
That's the
Yeah,
problem. You can't have somebody
It
dedicated.
is budget season and, we are going for.
So you know, they're gonna come with questions, say, you asked for this, we need.
Budget meeting is tomorrow.
All right, I think we beat meeting minutes. So if we drop down to the next major section, questions from commissions. After you approve a project, somewhere along the line, staff does a review meeting held with all sorts of interested parties, electric company, gas company, the fire department. What guardrails are there to make sure that everything that approval ends up being dealt with in those staff meetings? That it's all covered. Well, yeah, in the staff review, what guardrails are there to make sure everything that came through the process political gets taken care of?
Me personally, I rely on the integrity of staff to follow through with what the planning commission and the council is.
Or it's adopted that way.
All right, and then we don't get feedback on what comes out of staff review. I wonder if it would benefit us if we did get a 5 or 10 minute synopsis and the manager about what happened in the staff review and what major things may have been brought up that were outside of anything we ever brought up. Just think of fire marshal, one, or, you know, one of the utilities may have something to inject into the conversation.
I'll make a comment. I think sometimes on our commission, we get into the weeds with some of the questions, which are going to be reviewed or explained in site review. I would love, and I think we mentioned this, to have, say, a planning commission member be at each site review meeting. That could get some of these questions answered. Instead of bringing them up during our planning commission, it's something that, you know, well, this is going to be approved or looked at site review with the developer. Maybe one of us should be there. One or more, I don't know. Just a thought.
There's also another thing, if I understand the concern. And I have the same concern. I've said it at council meetings before. But we have to, let's say, traffic. We have to approve something and say, well, this is dependent upon SCDOT. Right? So we're giving up our right to make a decision based on a SCDOT approval that may never come in. And if we knew that, we make the same decision. So what I would ask for is an exception report. I don't need to know that, you know, we asked for 10 things and 10 of them all happened. I don't need to know that. But if we asked for 10 things and 2 of them got turned down by SCDOT, that exception report, I think, would benefit us all. Is that possible, Mike?
So are you asking for like a, kind of report, just on the,
Just
what was submitted? Okay.
You know, we all express concerns about, traffic. Let's just say for a second. Part of that is turning lane. And we all said it's up to SCDOT approval. Also, there were roads going through wetlands. So what happens if SCDOT doesn't approve? So that thing goes ahead, it gets done, and the things that we based our decision in didn't happen. Those are the exceptions that I think our council or planning commission are interested in.
Yeah.
Not every yes, okay, that happened this plan.
I think we could come up with a report that could be given either monthly or quarterly to the council, because here's the status of the projects. Here's when they submitted, here's the response, here's where they at with our approvals, state approvals. I mean, I think we could come up with that, and that could be when we could give it to the planning commission and the council. I think.
We asked for a light, SCDOT turned it down.
Just have
Problems. That's the critical factor. Here you say, not everything that was, we don't want the yeses. What are the no's? Or-
You approved or proposed to approve, any exceptions. All right, I think we can come up with something that could
And then
provide that
becomes-
information.
Becomes a small report,
Yes.
not one piece. So,
Question. After council approval of the project, okay, so we've approved it, and we put it all in place. Now we rely on staff review to make the
Make it
conditions, to make it happen.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't happen, what are our, what options do we have at that time? We've already approved it, we put it all the way through the process.
go to the attorney and said, we're not happy, what's our options? We have the ultimate authority, passing ordinances. We also have the authority to repeal ordinance. It requires something. If something happens we don't like, yeah, we have an option, right? We can put forth an ordinance or repeal an ordinance, can't we?
Retroactively apply it, but if you have a project that's not in compliance with the ordinances, like with the rules that we put in place, then we have enforcement powers as well.
So,
And that's part of your process.
the opening crossings, we have some very specific items that we put in place as a council and as planning commission. What are our options if the developer does not follow through with those?
I mean, they won't get.
What if they get their development permits and they've done it and they still don't complete those portions of the project? That's where it will finally come into.
You really give us that.
Well, there's different. Permit process too, I mean, you have multiple permits, you can start with,
Okay.
you start with your site permit, and then you have, the development permit, and then you have to, I mean, they don't get their final certificate of occupancy, like that final
That's
stamp
all I
on
need to
it,
know.
until they're in compliance. And even after that, say something comes up, and they come and use this property, we still have ordinances in place to
So the
enforce them.
CO is the final option that we have to make sure they have followed through with everything that they have said that they would do to the council.
Everything that the city has for them for,
Okay.
they have to be in compliance with that before they get their CO.
All right, yeah, but the thing that Harry brought up are things that aren't really the developers.
True.
Turning lanes, you know, putting a proposed road to a wetland. Those are things that are controlled by those other government agencies or utilities.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, you know, again, if the DOT doesn't put the turn lanes in that you thought were critical to the project, I think I heard your host. you have no recourse because you cannot do an ordinance repealing your approval.
Your staff can answer the question specifically about the process of development, like how that occurs and like at what point. But we have the right, there are bits and things that the city council reviews. And as long as, these will be the things that you have voted for as well. So they don't get their until they've done all those things.
But if the state DOT, for example, says, we're not gonna do this thing that council put in their approval, the project doesn't die. You have recourse if a developer fails to do what he was told to do. You don't have recourse against another agency if they don't do what you wanted.
No, you don't, because you don't have authority over that agency.
Right. So your host.
Yeah, an example could be on Argent Parcel F. We
Right.
required a turning lane to go in. State could come back and say, no, you can't have a turning lane there. We've already approved the project. Where does it leave us?
The project's approved and without turning lanes.
I like the concept of proposed, that's a good legal term.
Proposed, yeah.
It's always been, particularly, we as two governing, two bodies, we probably wouldn't approve. Yes. Now, we approved the project based on. Said, I see DOT says, no, we can't do that, you can't do this. You didn't get the right of way, you know, wetlands in that culvert, whatever it is. And we gave our approval on that condition, so Steve's question is, what recourse do we have in that specific case?
Can we deny,
Can we go back and say, we approved this based on this condition, and now that condition can't happen, can we repeal that ordinance?
Was something that you didn't, the DOT still has to, their roads and their turn-ins.
So they said no,
You can't go back.
they said no,
You can't go back.
so we can't go back. So the other option we have, say, okay, when DOT comes back with the permission, then we'll.
can we put
Because
it,
right now, we're leaving it up to DOT. We're basing our decisions on something that's totally out of our hands. And if it doesn't happen, then it's saying we don't have any recourse.
can we put it in our ordinance that prior to, any construction or anything with the project, the DOT approval must be in hand? Can that be put into the ordinances?
That is
A
part,
conditional approval, that's.
I mean, that's part of your site review, that they have to present DOT approval to the city to move forward with permitting.
So why can't,
That's part of your site review, I mean, DOT approvals, you have to, they can't get there.
so if they don't get that at the site review and we've already, then where do they go from there?
DOT approval, then they don't.
So the project
They
is
don't get
dead.
to do their project.
So the
Right,
project's
they have to
dead.
figure-
Is the project dead?
I mean, they have to figure out something else or
So
some
the
other way to
developer
get
really
them.
needs to do their homework before they come.
Good,
Yeah.
thank you, that's all I was asking. How the situation.
If they don't get DOT approval, the city's not gonna let them continue with their project.
So back to the original question of planning commission having some site review. We really have no value other than we can sit in and listen, which you have invited in the past, but it sounds like you have limited seats available, I guess, because of room size or whatever, that we can't have somebody on a monthly basis come in and just listen in the room.
Getting a belly up to the table, as we like to say. Sometimes they have all those agencies, we have lots of people. Obviously during COVID, we limited that even for virtual and other things. But for information gathering,
Yeah, because I figured you guys would just do it.
but it would be more helpful for like one at a time, not in
So the question I have for Karina is, all these conditions that come down the pipe during approval process, do those get included in the,
Conditions
like,
approval for master plan approvals are part of your zoning. So
right,
that gets included in the master plan.
okay,
Or the initial master plan approval,
Okay.
usually I think is when those come in. That's not, and then the master plans are an exhibit to your DA, the development agreement, those don't get put in the development agreement. They get put with your initial master plan approval. That's why whenever you have a actual condition, sometimes we'll do to make sure it's part of that motion, that it's an initial part of the record.
okay, that's good. So they can stipulate it's in, correct, is that how I'm?
The approval of that
Of that
initial master
Master
plan.
plan, correct, okay, thanks.
If I would make a suggestion, Mr. Chair, just as we do with our council meetings, we get a certain point. So it becomes a little bit tricky. I think we've had a discussion today, and I would suggest it's open up to schedule.
There's one more item that really needs to be addressed to make sure that the second page. But I'm looking to work out our options. Yeah, that's pretty important because we've been told we can't huddle together, so to speak, to work out how we want to make the motion. Is that possible?
Like off mic
Yeah.
kind of thing?
I don't know.
Public meetings.
No, you can't.
We make our motions and, if me and someone else wants to put up a motion, but, we know we're on similar track, but
Yeah.
wording
You
it.
can just.
So I have to make a motion, he makes a counter motion, or?
No, just say, I would like to make a motion or make some sort of motion that achieves this. I mean, you can have that discussion. Our council does that very, very often, as long as it's part of your public discussion.
You just
can't
make a
have-
public discussion of how I want to make the motion.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then you'll get, I know a lot of times I do this for our council. They'll say they want to do X, Y, and Z, and then I'll even draft a motion for them that accomplishes that. So you can just have that discussion in your meeting.
But it's public. Here's Robert's Rules of Order. You have a motion, you have a second. Only. I open up to the public. So let's say you want a stipulation. I make a motion, we approve it with these three stipulations. If you get a second to that, then that becomes the motion, and then your, becomes.
Well, actually, backing up just before you present a motion, for instance, gee, I think I heard 4 things that we want to incorporate into motions. This, and this. Did I miss anything? Okay, and then how do we want to word them? It's kind of where we were at before we get to the point of he makes a motion, bang, 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 bang. It's the discussion that actually prepares the words we're going to make the motion. So that can't happen as a sidebar, so be it.
But it can happen on, it can be in public.
We do it online.
Do it online.
We understand. Okay.
And when we do a council, we have those 4 things. And, I frequently ask, we're still discussing it out, whoever's gonna make the motion. Now we have it all done with the words of our attorney into the motion proper.
Even then, he'll read it, or I can read it.
So at that point, kind of follow this, and maybe get it ready another time.
I do want to say one thing. I thank everybody for the time that everybody gives the planning commission, the time that you put in. is in the minutes. And the staff, I mean, the council's decision is the council's decision, but without the input of you and the staff making it possible, it'd never get done. It's just, it's a complicated process, and without everybody picking up their, ball at their time and carrying it, we never get it done.
Before we adjourn, we want to open the meeting up to questions from the public. Mr. Public, do you have any questions or comments?
I have one comment regarding the second Wednesday of 10 a.m. for the meeting. Possible you might be able to move that to the first Wednesday, give it a little more time. The reason that second Wednesday was set about 13 or 14 years ago is because one of our planning commission members played tennis every other day, but not on.
Start somewhere.
Yeah. Which one of you all played the tennis game?
As far as I'm concerned, you could have it 5 o'clock on Friday. You'll make friends with the staff. I think, listen, whatever time, it's once a month. You just take into consideration the staff class and also the availability of the applicants either. But if you have it, every once a month on the third Thursday at midnight, that's your call.
Steve, to be smart for alcohol.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Mr. Public?
No, sir.
All right. Any comments or questions from staff? Seeing none.
I have one last comment. for this meeting. I think it's important. I just want to thank you as chair for keeping forward these concerns to us as a council. I've been using this example a lot lately. Mike and I got called in by one of the developers, who I'm sure you know. He had a list of complaints about that. And so Mike and I had a meeting, our inspector, our team, the builder was there, and we just put him abreast of each other. And they worked it out. Before, they were saying, he said, I didn't say that, I didn't get the email, but they worked it out, and in an hour, face to face, right across.
No blood on the floor.
No blood on the floor. And all I'm saying, what I got out of it today is we got a lot more accomplished rather than letting feelings, that's fester. It wasn't intended to discredit anybody, but staff, this member of council, or this member of the commission. It was a way to come away with a better understanding. So thank you, Mr. Stewart, for asking for this, putting it together, and I think we all come away with a better understanding. Staff to us, and they worked it out. I'll shut up.
Do we need to make a motion to adjourn?
I don't think we did.
I don't think we made it.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate your help.
I gotta get it.